What if the people who were supposed to love you saw you as nothing more than a burden? What if the ones you trusted most, your family, were the ones who told you every day that you were useless? Those were the questions I had never thought I'd have to ask myself until one day, everything changed. I'm Luna Everly, 26 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I had been treated like I was invisible, especially by my parents. "You're wasting your potential," they'd say. "You'll never be anything. You'll never be as successful as your brother." The words they said haunted me every day of my life. My family was perfect, at least. That's how they saw themselves. My brother, Nathan, had always been the golden child. He excelled in everything, had the perfect career, the perfect life. Me? I was just the daughter they couldn't figure out. They told me I'd never amount to anything, that I was too dreamy and delusional. I was useless. At least, that's what they always told me. But here's the secret they didn't know. I had a plan, a big one. While they were busy telling me I was destined to fail, I was quietly building something that would change everything. In the silence of my small apartment, I poured my heart into creating something real, something they would never expect. They didn't know that while they criticized me, I was building an empire. It wasn't some half-baked idea or hobby I was pretending to work on. No, this was the real thing. I was working on a 300 million tech startup and not a soul knew. Not my parents, not Nathan, no one. It had taken everything I had. Late nights, sleepless days, failed ventures, but I had finally cracked it. I wasn't the useless daughter they thought I was. I was exactly who I needed to be, and it was time to show them. The night before the family reunion, I sat alone in my apartment, looking at the email that confirmed everything. 300 million deal completed. I could feel the weight of it in my hands. It wasn't just the money, it was proof. Proof that I had done this on my own, despite everything they had told me. But the real moment would come tomorrow. The moment I could finally walk into that reunion and show them everything they had overlooked for years. The moment I proved I wasn't useless, I was powerful. I stood up from my desk and stared at myself in the mirror. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "they won't know what hit them." The days leading up to the family reunion felt like a countdown to something huge, but also terrifying. Every second felt like a tug of war. Inside me, part of me was excited, but the other part was filled with doubt. What if this was all a mistake? What if revealing my success only led to more rejection from the people who had never seen me for who I truly was? I sat alone in my small apartment, staring out the window at the city. The world was changing for me, but would it change for them too? My parents had always thought I was the one who would never make it. I was always too much or not enough. I was constantly reminded that I wasn't like my brother, Nathan. He had always been the perfect son, the one everyone expected to succeed. Meanwhile, I was the odd one out, the failure of the family. But the truth was, I wasn't the person they thought I was. I wasn't some lost, aimless girl waiting for a miracle. I had spent years quietly building something real. But still, a part of me couldn't shake the fear that they would never truly see me. They would never see the nights I stayed up working on my laptop, the countless hours spent reading, researching, and planning. They wouldn't know about the meetings I had or the deals I made. They wouldn't understand the sacrifices I'd made just to prove them wrong. Even now, with my 300 million deal sealed, I couldn't help but wonder, am I still that girl in their eyes? The girl who didn't know where she was going? I knew that tomorrow, when I walked into that reunion, everything would change. But the real question was, would they ever accept me for who I was now? Or would they still look at me as the disappointment, the one who'd never amounted to anything? The closer I got to the family reunion, the more I questioned myself. Was I doing this for revenge? Or was I simply doing it to prove to myself that I could break free from the image they had built for me? I wasn't sure yet, but I was sure of one thing. I had earned this success. No one handed me anything. I had spent years quietly grinding, and tomorrow I would show them everything. The night before the reunion, I stared at the email on my screen. The subject line: Final papers signed, 300 million deal complete. My fingers hovered over the mouse, and for a brief moment, I felt a rush of relief. This wasn't just about the money. It was about something deeper: the years of hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears I'd poured into making this happen. I stood up from my desk, walking over to the window. I could see the lights of the city in the distance. Tomorrow would change everything. I was done hiding, done pretending to be what they wanted me to be. Tomorrow, I would walk into that reunion with my head held high, and they would see me for who I truly was. Not the useless daughter, but someone who had built something real, on my own. The next morning, I dressed carefully. I didn't need to wear a flashy dress or pile on jewelry. I just needed to walk into that room with confidence. I knew that my presence would speak louder than any words ever could. As I stepped out the door, the weight of the past felt lighter. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I wasn't walking into that reunion for their approval anymore. I was walking in to prove something to myself, to show them who I was now, and I would not be overlooked again. The family reunion was everything I'd feared and everything I'd hoped for, all at once. As I walked through the grand entrance of my family's mansion, I felt that familiar weight in my chest, the same weight that had been there every time I'd stepped into this house before. But this time, it wasn't fear weighing me down, it was anticipation. This time, I wasn't the girl who had nothing to show. This time, I was walking in with power, with success they couldn't ignore. I could feel their eyes on me as I entered. My father, who had always scrutinized me the hardest, didn't even look up. "Here she comes." I thought I heard him mutter, half smirking, as if I were still the failure they once expected me to be. But what he didn't know was that he was about to be proven wrong. I stood there, just inside the doorway, as the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. It was like a scene from every family gathering I'd ever attended. My mother was sitting with her sisters, showing off their latest outfits and gossiping about everything from the weather to the latest charity events. Nathan was standing in the center of the room, as usual, holding court talking about his recent promotion, the latest investments, his future plans. To them, it was all so easy. Everything was set. They had it all figured out. I walked past them, unnoticed at first. It wasn't until I was a few steps into the room that Amber, my cousin, noticed me. She gave me that look, the one I had seen for years. The look of pity. The look that said, "Oh, Luna's here. How quaint." Well, if it isn't Luna," Amber said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "How's that little real estate project going? Did you finally make a sale?" She laughed, but there was an uncomfortable edge to it. A little too loud, a little too fake. She was fishing for a reaction. She always had. I could feel all eyes on me now. My parents were watching. Nathan was watching. But instead of shrinking away, instead of retreating like I would have years ago, I stepped forward. I didn't flinch. I didn't flounder. I wasn't the same person I used to be. This time, I was ready. "Funny you should ask," I said, my voice calm, controlled. "Actually, I just sold the whole property, and it's worth more than your latest car, Amber." The room fell silent. The sounds of chatter stopped. Amber's smile faltered for a split second before she caught herself, but I had already seen the shock flash across her face. I walked slowly to the center of the room. I didn't need to shout it. My presence said it all. Every step I took, I felt the weight of their judgment lifting. Every eye that was on me now wasn't filled with pity, they were filled with confusion, and maybe even a little fear. I took another breath. This was it. "I'm the new owner of Ashcraft Plaza," I said, my words deliberate and steady. "The entire complex. It's worth $300 million, and it's all mine." The silence that followed was deafening. My father, who had always been the one to brush me off the most, actually stopped mid-sentence. Nathan, who had always looked down on me, was standing frozen, his mouth open in disbelief. Amber, the queen bee of the family, stood there with her glass halfway to her mouth, her hand trembling. No one said a word, but their faces said it all. "What?" my father finally choked out, his voice thin with disbelief. "Yes, you heard me," I said, not needing to explain further. "It's real, and it's just the beginning." I watched as their eyes darted between each other, trying to process what I had just said. My parents' expressions were unreadable, but I could see the flicker of fear in their eyes. The fear that maybe they hadn't been right about me. That maybe, just maybe, I was more than they'd ever thought I could be. Nathan took a step forward, trying to mask his shock. He was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But now, his confidence was shaken. "This can't be real," he muttered, shaking his head. "How? How did you pull this off?" I stood tall, looking him in the eye. "How? By working harder than any of you ever believed I could, by building something from scratch in silence while you were all too busy judging me to even notice." My mother, who had always been the silent observer, now spoke. "Luna, we never knew." Her voice cracked, almost as if she was apologizing. But I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. Not for all those years of dismissing me, of making me feel less than. "That's the point, Mom," I replied, my voice steady but cold. "You never knew because you never gave me the chance to show you." The room was still for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a thick fog. My family didn't know how to react, but I didn't care anymore. I had already made my point. "I'm not the person you thought I was, and I'm not here to make you feel better about yourselves anymore," I said, turning to leave the room. "You'll have to learn to see me as I am." I stepped out of the room, my head held high, feeling the eyes of my family burning into my back. And as I left, I felt the shift that said I was no longer invisible. The air in the room had shifted. The once familiar, judgmental gaze of my family was replaced with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and a growing sense of fear. The silence felt deafening, and I could hear the clink of glasses and the rustle of clothing as everyone exchanged glances, unsure of what to do next. But not me. I was no longer invisible. I stood in the center of the room, the weight of my success grounding me like never before. I didn't have to speak another word. The shock on their faces said everything I needed it to, but I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. As I turned to walk toward the door, I felt their eyes following me, their silent judgment still hanging in the air. But this time, it wasn't filled with pity. It was uncertainty. I wasn't the same person they thought I was. I wasn't the girl who had failed, the one they dismissed as a lost cause. I had become something far greater than they ever imagined. Before I reached the door, I heard my father's voice, low and heavy with disbelief. "Luna, wait." I froze, but didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was coming. His voice was filled with a sense of authority, one he had always held over me. The patriarch. The one who thought he could control everything, including me. But this time, it was different. "What is this? This is not how we raised you. You've changed." His words stung, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not the one who's changed, Dad. You're just seeing me for who I truly am for the first time." There was a long pause before he spoke again. The tension in his voice was palpable, a mixture of frustration and regret. "This is not how we expected things to go. We never thought you'd succeed, not like this." I turned to face him, my back straight, my posture unwavering. "You never thought I would succeed because you never believed in me. You thought I was a failure, just like everyone else." Nathan stepped forward then, still in shock, still trying to wrap his head around what had just happened. "This isn't a game, Luna. You can't just show up here and throw all of this in our faces and expect everything to be okay." I could feel the anger building in me, but I kept it under control. This wasn't about lashing out. It was about finally being seen. "I'm not throwing anything in your face, Nathan," I said, my voice sharp but calm. "I'm just showing you who I really am. For years, you and everyone else treated me like I was invisible, like I was too much or too little. I've been hiding in the shadows for far too long, but not anymore." Amber, who had been standing silently on the edge of the room, spoke up, her voice quieter than usual. There was no mockery in her tone, only a hint of vulnerability. Luna too didn't know, I didn't realize. Her words were an admission of guilt, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make up for the years of judgment, the years of making me feel small. "No, Amber," I said, shaking my head slowly. "You didn't know because you never bothered to see me. And that's what makes all of this even harder to accept. You never once believed in me. And now, you're standing here wondering how it happened. My father took a deep breath, running his hand through his hair, the weight of it all finally hitting him. Luna, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything we said. But you can't just expect us to understand all of this so quickly. This is a lot. I stared at him, searching his face for the apology I had wanted to hear for years. But I didn't see it not fully. I saw guilt, but not understanding. And in that moment, I realized something. It's not for you to understand anymore, Dad. I didn't do this for you. I did this for me. I said the words slowly, making sure they landed. I turned away from my father and walked toward the door, feeling the weight of their stares on my back. I wasn't running away, though. I was leaving on my own terms. I had made my point, and now, it was time for them to reflect on everything I had just shown them. As I reached for the door, I heard Nathan's voice again, but this time, there was a hint of something different, maybe even a touch of regret. Luna, please don't walk away. His words were softer now, almost pleading. I get it. I get it now. I paused, but didn't turn around. No, Nathan, you don't get it, but one day, you will. And with that, I stepped out into the night, leaving them behind in the silence of their own thoughts. The cool air hit my skin, and for the first time, I felt free. I wasn't the disappointment they thought I was. I wasn't the failure. I was someone who had taken her future into her own hands. And now, nothing would hold me back. As I walked away from the mansion, the night air hit my face like a fresh wave of reality. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for years felt lighter, almost as if it had dissolved in the cool breeze. Every step I took was a step away from my past, from the girl I had been undervalued, unseen, the one they all thought would never make it. But now, I wasn't just walking away. I was walking toward everything I had worked for. I had built something real, something no one could take from me. And now, it was time to take my place in the world. I wasn't running from my family. I was moving forward without them. The next morning, I didn't wake up with a sense of victory. I woke up with a sense of freedom. Freedom from their expectations. Freedom from the weight of their doubt and criticism. I checked my phone and saw a message from my lawyer, confirming the finalization of the last part of my DELF, the largest one yet. Congratulations, Luna. Ashcraftoft Plaza is officially yours. A soft smile tugged at my lips as I sat back against the chair, soaking in the reality of it all. It wasn't just the money. It was the culmination of everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of. But as I stared at the phone, one thought crossed my mind. What now? I could have stayed in the comfort of my success, basking in the glow of my achievements. But that wasn't who I was anymore. I had fought for this. And now that I had proven to myself that I could create something of my own, there were still more challenges waiting. There were still people who didn't believe in me, still competitors who would try to knock me down. But this time, I was ready. A few days later, my phone rang. It was a call I had been expecting, but I hadn't anticipated it coming so soon. Luna, the voice on the other end said, familiar and businesslike. We have a proposal for you. It's a big one. We'd like to discuss an acquisition offer. You've created something extraordinary. It was an offer to expand my empire even furthermore. Money, more opportunities, more power. But as the words fell from the phone, I felt no excitement, no rush. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I had already won. I had already built something that couldn't be taken away from me, no matter what anyone said or offered. But that didn't mean I wasn't ready for the next challenge. Weeks passed, and the echo of my family reunion faded. The family that once saw me as a failure had finally started seeing me for who I really was. My parents had begun to call more frequently, and even Nathan had sent a tentative text, asking if we could talk sometime soon. They were trying, in their own way, but I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the blazer I had just purchased for a meeting with a potential investor. The reflection that stared back at me wasn't the same girl who once doubted herself. It wasn't the girl who second-guessed every decision, who craved acceptance. This was the version of me who had been forged in solitude, in resilience, in the hard work I'd put in while everyone else told me I couldn't. I had taken control of my own future, and now nothing was impossible. As I walked out the door and into the future I had created, I took a deep breath. I wasn't just walking toward a new chapter, I was walking into a new life. My family had seen me for who I truly was, and I knew I had more to prove. But this time, it wasn't about them. It was about me, about showing the world that I wasn't the person they had always tried to define. I wasn't the useless daughter, or the girl who would always be left behind. I was Luna Everly, a woman who had built her own empire, and now, the world would have to recognize that. As I drove to my meeting, I couldn't help but smile. I wasn't afraid anymore. The girl who had once been afraid to step into the light was now the one shining brighter than anyone could have imagined. And this was just the beginning. If Luna's story resonated with you, and you believe in the power of proving others wrong, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Smash that like button if you think everyone deserves a chance to show their true potential, no matter where they come from. And hey, if you want to be part of more inspiring transformations like Luna's, hit subscribe and turn on the bell notifications so you never miss an empowering story like this one. You won't want to miss what's next.